Welcome to this training module, which outlines the Brost Well Servicing Hearing Conservation Program. To assure the company's compliance with Part 16 of the Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Code, Brost Well Servicing has developed a hearing conservation program. The objective of this program is to protect you, the worker, from exposure to excess workplace noise and to prevent work-related noise-induced hearing loss. The elements required by legislation and addressed within the Brost Well Servicing Hearing Conservation Program include the following. The requirements for measuring potential worker exposure to noise and the identification of the work areas where noise may exceed the noise exposure limits. Procedures for addressing noise at the worksite and the methods of noise control to be used. Educating workers in the hazards of exposure to excess noise and training in the selection, fit, use, and maintenance of hearing protection devices to be used and worn by workers. The requirements for providing workers at risk for exposure to excess noise with audiometric testing. Ensuring worker familiarity with the procedures for conducting an annual review of the noise management program. In response to steadily rising hearing loss claims made to the Alberta Workers' Compensation Board, significant changes were made to Part 16, Noise, of the Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Code. On March 31, 2023, the threshold for conducting a noise exposure assessment was reduced from 85 decibels to 82 decibels. This was done to ensure that noise is assessed before the occupational exposure limit is exceeded. Noise is inherent to service rig mobile equipment. A noise assessment previously undertaken by the company identified noise levels in excess of the occupational exposure limits, OELs, and 85 decibels. Since the previous noise assessment, the company's operations and equipment have undergone significant changes. To assure compliance with current legislation, Brost Well Servicing contracted a certified third-party service provider to complete a noise assessment on all current equipment and operations. The noise assessment was completed using a calibrated Larson-Davis 706 noise dosimeter. In total, 12 units were monitored for noise. The noise level was monitored on both sides and at the front and back of each piece of equipment. The noise levels at each piece of equipment appear on the following slides. The key findings identified as a result of the noise assessment are of significant consequence to Brost Well Servicing and our employees. All of the units surveyed had noise levels greater than 85 decibels, where hazard controls, including hearing protection devices, would be required if a worker were to be exposed for a prolonged period. Each doghouse with closed doors had readings less than 80 decibels and were deemed safe for prolonged use without the implementation of hazard controls and no need for hearing protection devices. Brost Well Servicing will endeavor to protect workers from the hazard of noise by implementing hazard controls in accordance with the hierarchy of controls. Engineering controls offer the highest level of protection. Administrative controls follow engineering controls in terms of effectiveness. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is considered the last line of defense. Engineering controls that have been found effective in eliminating or reducing noise levels include selecting low noise tools and machinery, maintaining and lubricating machinery and equipment, for example, lubricating oil bearings, placing a barrier between the noise source and the employee, such as sound walls or curtains, and enclosing or isolating the noise source. Brost Servicing has endeavored to provide equipment that has reduced sound levels. However, service rig equipment is inherently noisy. The noise measurements provided conclude that despite noise dampening efforts, the noise levels at all locations apart from the doghouse require a combination of controls to provide workers with optimal protection. Administrative controls that have been implemented by Brost Servicing to protect workers from noise hazard include limiting the amount of time a worker is exposed to a noise source, providing quiet areas where workers can gain relief from hazardous noise sources, such as a doghouse with a closed door, posting hazard signage at locations where workers are or may be exposed to excess noise at the worksite, and labeling all noise sources with the decibel measurement identified within the noise exposure assessment. Additional administrative controls which have been legislated and implemented by Brost Servicing include audiometric testing and training. Brost Servicing provides all workers who are or may be exposed to excess noise at a worksite or in a work area an initial baseline audiometric test as soon as reasonably practicable, but not later than 6 months after the worker is employed, or within 6 months after the worker is or may be exposed to excess noise because of a change in the worker's duties or process conditions. A further test will be conducted not more than 12 months after the initial baseline test, and then testing will occur every second year after the second audiometric test is undertaken. Training of newly hired employees in the Brost Servicing noise management, hearing conservation, and personal protective equipment programs will occur during the worker's initial orientation. The topics addressed will include general training in the causes and types of hearing loss, identification of the work areas at the worksite where noise may exceed the noise exposure limits, procedures for addressing noise at the worksite, and the selection, correct fit, use, and maintenance of hearing protection devices to be used and worn by workers. The noise exposure assessment indicates that noise levels at most work areas of a service rig are at or exceed 105 decibels. The CSA standard regulating hearing protection devices requires workers to use dual hearing protection at noise levels of 105 decibels or over. That is a minimum of a Class B earmuff and a Class A earplug. It may surprise you to learn that more than 50% of all workers using earplugs insert them incorrectly. Earplugs inserted incorrectly provide little or no protection from noise hazard. To ensure the proper insertion and fit of earplugs, a qualitative fit test using the specific type of earplug to be worn by each worker will be performed. This is done by conducting an acoustical check. But what is an acoustical check? In a noisy environment with earplugs inserted, the worker will be instructed to cup their hands over their ears and then release. Earplugs should block enough noise so that covering their ears with their hands should not result in a significant noise difference. A similar qualitative fit test is performed to ensure the proper placement and fit of earmuffs. Earmuffs will be donned and the earmuff cushion secured along both sides of the worker's head. Once the cushions are centered over the ears, they are pressed and then let go. When properly placed, the earmuff should significantly reduce the noise level in a noisy environment. If noise is not dampened, a different style or size of earmuff should be tried. Personal protective equipment is considered the last line of defense. It is common for most individuals to take their hearing for granted. We often perform tasks without thinking about our exposure to noise, such as attending music concerts, mowing lawns, or using power tools. The use of hearing protection often doesn't seem important until workers experience the first signs of hearing loss. Unfortunately, the first signs of hearing loss typically appear after the damage is already done. Brost Well Servicing cares about your health and well-being. We are committed to doing everything we can to protect you from the hazard of noise and to preventing work-related noise-induced hearing loss. However, these measures will be ineffective without your cooperation. The protection of your hearing relies upon your commitment to our noise management and hearing conservation programs and your compliance with the implemented hazard controls.